All right, welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. I'm your host, Jason Lee. We're glad to have you today, and today we're joined by State Representative Ed Thompson from House District 29. So Ed, we're glad to have you today.
Thank you.
Just a quick note before we get started. I'm excited to have Representative Thompson on the show today, otherwise known as Ed. That's because he had to correct me before the show. I got to meet him personally in our Pearland in a Bible study with a friend of ours who's been on the show, Rick Torreson, that he hosts out there. And I thought, man, what a great guy. He always had something great to say, just some little nugget of wisdom. And then I found out maybe like a year or two later that you were the guy that represented my district, which was unbelievable. So, and since then you've had my vote. So I've always been a big fan.
I appreciate it.
And you were always so humble. And then prior to the show, even my what do I call you? And you just said simply, just call me Ed. So that speaks to a lot about the man we're talking today. And I think it also talks just kind of in general about our House representatives and our servants, because unlike a lot of positions, they're essentially volunteers, from my understanding. And so, and you've been really busy in the last few months.
Yeah.
And you're about to be even busier over the next couple. So love to hear kind of more about that today. We're going to talk about the last legislative session. We're going to talk about this emergency session that was called. I think you're heading out for a couple of days for that. So we'll hear more about that and then some of the things you guys have been working on. But before we dive in, let's hear a little bit about you.
Okay.
Tell us kind of, how did you get into this? What do you do for a living? I know you're in my backyard. You've been there for quite a while.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear just kind of about Ed Thompson.
Okay, thank you. Well, I started an insurance agency in Pearland in 1982. Moved to the community, and I've always felt like it's very, very important to give back to your community. I just felt like it was important. So a few years, it was the mid-90s, I decided to run for the school board. And so I laughed. I said probably the toughest elected position in the state of Texas is a school board member. But I spent 3 years on the school board there, and actually lost a re-election, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it really taught me a lot about serving other people. I mean, you serve people, and when they decide it's time for you to go, then they decide it's time for you to go, and you have to accept that and move on. And it was difficult. It was one of those things where we had done a lot of really great things. We'd bought a lot of property for the district because we saw the growth that was coming, but a lot of people just kind of took issue with that and thought we were spending money we didn't need to spend. And so, but again, there's certain things that you do politically, that you look at what's best for, in this case, the school district and the kids and their education, and you don't put yourself ahead of that. You put your, what's doing the right thing as the thing you do, and so I really learned that early on, that just doing the right thing's the right thing to do. And so I stayed out of elected politics for a number of years. I served as chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce there in Pearland. It was sort of a funny thing. I was on the board, and the gentleman that was going to be the chairman, he couldn't, or decided not to, and then the guy that was the chairman-elect, he couldn't because he was in the process of building a bank. So they came to me and said, "Hey Ed, do you want to be the chairman of the board?" And so I did, and that was when Carol Arts-Buchek first came to Pearland. That was her initial period at the chamber president. So she and I started out together, and really felt like we did a great job in trying to get the chamber online and get that done. And then after serving there, I was nominated to be on the Pearland Economic Development Corporation, and I spent 6 years there. I was the president of the PDC. We did a lot of things on economic development, a lot of the area out to the west there, the Lower Kirby area. We did a lot of work in that area. Didn't get a lot of things actually on the ground out there, but as they say, we sort of plowed the ground, and now there's a lot of industry out there that was because of those early days when we were working on that area as well. So And then after 6 years there, I decided, I was going to try my hand at elected again, and I decided to run for city council, and was elected. And one night at a council meeting, my phone rang, and it was Randy Weber. And I was kind of a little bit caught aback. I thought, well, what's he calling for? And the call was that he was going to run for Congress and wanted to know if, I had an interest in running for his state rep seat, which was House District 29. So, and so I told Randy, I said, well, I don't know, I need to pray about this, and I really need to talk to my wife, it's a pretty important decision. And I said, but I got to go to Austin tomorrow for an insurance issue. And I said, I'll think about it, and I'll call you. So we left the house early because we had to be in Austin like at 9 a.m. And so I think it was about 5:30 the phone rang, and it was Randy, and he's like, well, you made a decision yet? And I'm like, well, Randy, it's only 5:30 in the morning. But we decided that we were going to do that. It was something I had always had an interest in, and now I'm finishing up my 5th term as the state rep in House District 29. So I've been very blessed. The people of my community have just been outstanding to me and my family, and trusted us to do what's the right thing, and it's kind of humbling to know that they've allowed us to do this for this long.
That's amazing. So we're talking about from it sounds like almost a timeline of maybe 20 years already that you've been in, if not more, that you've been in some level of form of service for the community.
Yeah.
And then for the region, for the city, and then now for the state.
Sure.
Unbelievable. That's amazing. So, and keep in mind that you have a day job.
Yeah.
And a wife.
And a wife. It gets to be a challenge at times. It really does. And I'm blessed. My wife has just always been outstanding as far as putting up with a lot of the things that I've decided, to do, and she's gone along. And I've always told some people, I've said, told the young guys, I said, if you're thinking about marrying someone, tell them you're going to run for office and that they have to go knock on doors with you. And if he or she will go and knock on doors with you, you found the right person. Because it is a real. We've been out in the rain and cold and mosquitoes and everything else knocking on doors during that run for state rep and city council and all those things. So so she's come alongside me and been just always supportive and such a blessing.
That's amazing. And you guys have kids? And
2 children, and 4 grandkids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got it all put together. And are your kids in the region? Did they grow up?
My daughter's in the Austin area, and my son's in Houston. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you get to make trips up there to see them?
I see them. Yeah, I do.
Perfect.
So out great.
So tell us about District 29. What does that represent? What area?
It's really, I tell people it's northern Brazoria County. I have Pearland, Alvin, Manvel are the 3 of the larger, and then I've got Brookside Village, Hillcrest Village, Liverpool. They're all Iowa Colony. Part of Iowa Colony is in my district as well. So serve probably right now it's probably about 225,000 people in that.
Oh, wow.
In that area. So it's a little bit larger than what we started out with. There's been a lot of growth, especially along that 288 corridor. And we'll continue to see growth out there. Manvel and Iowa Colony, I've told people, sort of like, whoever heard of Frisco,
right.
That's what Iowa Colony is going to be like eventually, I think. Maybe not the size of a Frisco, but it'll be a very, very large community at some point in time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because of that 288 corridor and what that's going to mean to just southern Brazoria County.
So help us understand the role essentially of our elected officials in your position. Because essentially you're representing all those different cities. They have their own mayors and everything. So tell us kind of like a day in the life. What do you do when you're not in session?
Yeah. Well, I have a district director, Brandy Groth, who's my district director, and so we have a district office, and we have a lot of times we have opportunities to visit with constituents in the district. We'll have people that have, for example, during COVID, there were a lot of people that were going through issues with the Texas workforce, and their unemployment, and we reached out and helped a lot of those people. All sorts of things. When we get involved in driver's license, people issues with that, or birth certificates, and you name it. I mean, it's almost a one-stop shop, for people that are trying to deal with state agencies where they might be having a problem. And then too, we work real closely with Congressman Nails, who's our U.S. Congressman when it comes to federal issues, people having issues there, Social Security, passports, all those sorts of things. We refer them over and kind of hold their hand a little bit, getting them over there to get them some help there as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, when you talk about, you're helping them with all these number of things when it's not in session. Now let's talk a little bit about what session is, because I know that this doesn't come around all the time.
Right.
Can you give us kind of an overarching idea of
Sure.
what it means to be in session and how often they happen and what people can expect when those times come up?
Well, we're on a biennium basis, so we're there every other year. So we're basically here in the district during what I call the even years.
Okay.
And that's when we're trying to get reelected. And then we go back in the odd year and serve. So we're there second Tuesday in January until Memorial Day, so 140 days there in Austin. Many times, we're pretty much there full-time, if you will, during that period of time. So you have to make some living arrangements, and this time it was a little bit difficult because of COVID and all the issues there. But I stayed in a hotel this time as opposed to renting an apartment. But we rent, have to get a place to live. Then we're there full time. During that 140 days. So, and driving back and forth on the weekends. So that we can spend some time in our district. With events that we need to be at. During those periods of time.
Wow, it's a full-time life of service.
It's pretty much 24/7 during that time when you're in session and and coming back and forth to the district.
Now, I know a lot of times representatives, their region might be specifically tailored to a certain demographic. You get pockets. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I found, as you mentioned off those names of those cities, is that really covers a broad scope. Yeah. Even from an industry perspective, because I live over in a section right where there's a lot of industrial stuff. There's warehouses, there's a chemical company, Third Coast, which is right around the corner from me. Mm-hmm. It's transportation, logistics, but then you go right up the street and there's medical, right there at 288. So and even construction and industrial. So you've got a kind of a broad scope, even from living. There's homes that are $1 million homes in your area, all the way down to at the people who are really just trying to get started in life. Sure. In certain pockets of that. How do you ensure that you during these legislation sessions? How does a representative take into account ensuring that they hear from everybody over the course of a year?
Well,
from a priorities perspective.
That's really a difficult. That's one of the difficulties that we've got. We've got a very it's a growth area. Mm-hmm. So we've got people that are moving in there. In fact, in one of my precincts, we looked at the average voter had been registered less than 2 years in Brazoria County.
Wow.
So a very transient group of people that live in that in parts of my district. So it's very difficult for me to get, for them to know who I am, or for me to engage with them. That's a lot of we do town halls. We certainly make ourselves available. I even run ads in the community impact newspaper to say, contact me. Let me know what your issues are. A lot of social media, trying to push out information there and solicit feedback. And then we do a capital review from my state office and kind of send that out to a lot of the people that we have their email addresses and that sort of thing. And we try and engage every place we can.
Gotcha.
I laughed and said, I was at the car wash the other day, and a gentleman came up to me and started talking to me about an issue he had, and so, we followed up on it. We're following up on it now. It was a TxDOT issue that he had a concern with. So I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's not one specific place. I mean, I had people come and knock on my front door and and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something.
Right.
And so I try my best to listen to people. I can't always fix their problems.
Right.
But I really try my best to get as much information as I can and do my best to help them in the situation that they're in. Or in a lot of cases, it's a matter of sometimes referring them to an agency. A lot of times I always tell people it's, a lot of times I don't know everything, but I know a lot of people that know a lot.
Yeah.
So I can, in a lot of cases, I'm just the one that's kind of the handoff man.
Gotcha.
And so I can help them navigate some of those issues where they don't even know where to start.
Well, that's important.
It is.
There's nothing worse than being in a really critical situation and not knowing where to turn.
No.
And to know that you can turn to your local rep and they can help answer those questions is comforting. So, and that's great news for our audience. So anybody listening, it's like, hey, contact your local rep.
Well, I think sometimes people don't realize that. They don't really utilize the resources that a state rep has in their office because they just don't think about us too much. They see the federal, the people on the federal level, the congressman and that sort of thing, and naturally they're city council and they're those folks, but we're sort of in between the two, and in some cases people, don't realize that, we are there to help them, and willing to help them and want to help them.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I know that you serve on a number of committees. Can you tell us a little bit about what your committees are and what they do?
Sure. Well, I'm on the House Appropriations Committee, which is we deal with the budget. So we go through that process. I was on a subcommittee which dealt with Articles 6, 7, and 8, which are a lot of the agencies are under those articles. So like TCQ, TxDOT, Texas Parks and Wildlife, all those kind of folks. So we kind of delve into their budgets and work through that process as well, trying to put together the entire budget. Majority of our budget is spent on education and health and human services, but then we do have our agencies which are part of that as well. And then I'm also vice chair of the Transportation Committee, which deals with TxDOT's basically what we're charged with that part of it. So we have all the transportation legislation that comes through that committee. And then I was on the House Resolutions Committee, which deals with a lot of the resolutions that are done, which is sort of well, anyway, it's important. It's an administrative type committee, but I was on that committee this time as well. So
wow. Yeah, so we're going to have a talk after this about that ramp thing that you guys are doing at 610 and 59. Yeah, thanks for that. Just messing with you.
There's we always get a lot of comments about transportation. That's one thing that I'm also on the Transportation Policy Committee with HGAC as an ex officio, so I sit through a lot of those local meetings, and I really wanted to do that because I think it makes me better to be able to go up and represent my district and the region in Austin by listening to a lot of the concerns that are going on here in the region. Right now we've got the I-45 North segment that there's some issues with that, and TxDOT is talking about taking that out of the UTP, which is the Unified Transportation Plan, and I'm very concerned about that. That's about $6 billion worth of funding that the region could lose in if it comes out of that. And then we've got the Grand Parkway Segment B and Segment C, which Segment B goes through my district. Segment C is more in the Fort Bend area, but that kind of are the connectors to that Grand Parkway.
Right.
And it's very important to us from a standpoint of evacuation and that sort of thing to be able to get people out during hurricanes and disasters. So we're working with TxDOT on that as well. So just a lot of just a lot of things that you're always hearing from people about issues with transportation, trying to get around the Houston area.
Well, I think the best way to describe traffic needs and the construction is literally ripping the Band-Aid off. Because eventually, at some point in time, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. It's going to be painful for a little while. I remember 288 was painful for a little while. Now that it's open, it's like a miracle. You know, you can get down on that it's toll and just I'm in downtown in 15 minutes.
I know, it's amazing. It is.
It really is.
Yeah, and that's why there's going to be a lot of growth out in our area, because people are going to see that. It's a quality of life thing. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, if you can spend an extra hour at home with your family, and you're not sitting in traffic. Plus, we've got air quality issues. You know, cars sitting bumper to bumper. That leads to more, you know, of the issues with CO2 and all the SOx and the NOx and then the VOx and everything else that we deal with in emissions.
You sound like Dr. Seuss.
I know. But, you know, we deal with a lot of those things. I was on the Environmental Reg Committee for 3 sessions, so I really got down in the weeds on some of that and working with TCQ, and that's very important to our region. I mean, you know, and I'm very concerned about with the new administration on a federal level, what that's going to mean to us from a standpoint of, you know, how the EPA, are they going to come in here and things they're going to do. So we've just got to get, we've got to think about these things and make sure that we're making good choices and looking at the possibilities that are out there for us.
Right. I think that's a great jump off point for our next topic, because we were just talking about TERP, right, or TERP. Before we got into this, and you were just now sharing your, you know, about emissions, and I think those two things kind of flow, and so we can jump off and dive into that for a second. We just had some pretty big accomplishments in this last legislative sessions, and that being one of them. Can you talk to us a little about it's called the Texas Emissions Reduction Program? Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it's been in play for many years, and basically the money that's going into that was actually in the general revenue, and it's been sort of set aside in a trust now to where the money's going out not within the budget, so it can be spent a little bit different than it was before. It doesn't have to be appropriated necessarily like what we did in the past, and that's going to be, I think, helpful from a standpoint of TCQ being able to you know, fund more of these grants and not have their hands so much tied by appropriators. You know, when it comes to being able to fund those programs, I had a bill this time that would have opened TERP up a little bit more for some of the air monitoring capabilities that were out there. We also had another program that would have helped, I think, in the ports. There's actually some technology now to where they have it looks like a barge that has this almost crane-looking thing, and it has a what I call like a vent that goes up over the top of the smokestacks of these ships, and it actually collects that, you know, the emissions that are coming off of those ships.
Wow.
They're using it in California and in the LA port there, and it's something I wanted to try and get done here in our port because I think it's very important to our region from a standpoint of just, like I said earlier, air quality. And, you know, my whole thing with this is if we as a state, if we don't step up and do it, then the federal government's going to come in here and do it, and you know we don't want that. We want to be able to control what we do and how we do things. So I think it's important that we continue to have those conversations. We did get some legislation passed this time on TERP. I had a little part in that with the ability for some of our boats that have diesels that operate within the non-attainment area to be able to apply for grants for some of these dirty diesels that they've got, you know, older diesels that they can replace, and they can get this grant money from TERP to be able to do. So, you know, anything we can do like that will, you know, that will improve our air quality. I think it's important that we do that. I really do.
Well, I think the real nugget in what you just said is if we, as a state, take our own initiative, then we can essentially keep the federal government out of it. And that tends to be more favorable for us because we know our issues. You're in the trenches.
Sure.
we know what we're faced with. And Texas is an energy mecca, and it's a transportation mecca, and it's a logistics mecca. I mean, we really, especially this port region defines that.
Yeah.
But we also have to do it. I just last week had a gentleman on that discussed sustainability and a number of other things. And so as a region, we're taking a very aggressive role in improving the quality of life, sustainability, air quality, all of those things. And when you're going to continue to sustain financial capacity, it's how do you do it in a way that is also fruitful for the environment as well. And I think we're taking very good leaps and bounds there. So thanks to guys like yourself kind of fighting for that. So
No, it's important that we do that, but from a standpoint of just expansion of our industry. If for whatever reason they can't expand, then they have to go to another state possibly or another country to do that. And we want those good jobs. We want that industry. We want that here in Texas.
So a lot of our audience is industrial-driven, construction, manufacturing folks that kind of are, our listeners are the folks that live and work in this region. Is there anything specific that went through this last session that you think might be relevant that they'd want to hear about?
Well, again, I think there's a lot of things that we did from a standpoint of, transportation, a lot of things in the budget, education. I know they need an educated workforce. I mean, any industry. I don't care what industry you're in. You're looking for folks that are educated that you can bring into your organization. And I think we really stepped up this time and funded a lot of the issues that we had in House Bill 3. We continue to fund that this time, and I think it's going to improve a lot of improvement in our public schools and in our universities. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from both the university level down to our public schools. So education is important to all of us. It's a quality of life issue. People aren't going to move to an area where there's not good education. I mean, we're sitting in Deer Park, which is known for its great schools, and that's why people moved here. Pearland, the same thing.
Absolutely.
In my district, Alvin has got a great reputation at my Alvin ISD, and it's a large district. It's 250 square miles.
Wow.
So you can see the growth that's the ability for growth there. So those are the sorts of things we as legislators really need to keep our eye on. Is that, as you said, quality of life. Both from a standpoint of, the good jobs, the education, the mobility, the ability for people to be able to enjoy living in our region.
Right, fantastic. And then we're diving into a special session. And thank you in advance because you carved out some time. You're already on a busy schedule to make it over here today.
Sure.
In a couple of days, you're going to leave. This, by the way, will be shared after you've already left. So, so for our audience, but you're going to be leaving to head out to Austin for what's called a special session. Yeah. So what does that mean?
Well, the governor, has the ability to call a special session, and he can call that at any time. So what he's done is called us back on July 8th. I'm not sure what time we have to be there on July the 8th. Yeah, I was like, my wife says, well, when are you leaving? I said, well, I'm not real sure yet. So hopefully we'll find out something here in the next day or two. I guess we will hear something, I'm sure. But it'll be a 30-day special session, or up to 30 days. We could, I guess, finish it up sooner than that. But I don't really expect us to finish it up sooner than 30 days. And it depends on how he puts out the call. So, some people have said that he's going to put out one item at a time, and we'll deal with that item, and then he'll put another item on the call. Back in, I believe it was 2017. I think it was 2017. We had there were 20 items on the call, and so we just don't know right now what that's going to look like. I mean, many of us are speculating as to, election integrity, some of those issues that we left, bail reform, that we left kind of undone at the end of the session, that will be on that call. But that's the governor's. That's his prerogative. I mean, he has that ability to do that. And then we'll also have to come back again at the end of the year to do redistricting. Because of COVID, the census numbers were delayed. So we're in a position right now where we're waiting on that. And many have said that'll be at the end of September, early October. So I kind of laughed the other day and I told somebody, they said, well, how long are you going to be there? And I said, well, I just hope I'm not on the House floor when they put up the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to be able to get in and out and get that done and, get back home. 'Cause we have, like you said, we have businesses, we have families.
It sounds like this year, I mean, it could be essentially almost a 12-month deal for you.
Well, it could,
pretty close to it.
This thing could end up, my first legislative session, we had 3 specials back to back. So we were there an additional 90 days. So I remember I had to call my wife. We had a cruise planned. And I had to call my wife and tell her, that cruise we were going to go on, we're not going on it. So there's some real sacrifices that folks make up there, each and every day that they're there. And I wish people were a little more understanding of those sacrifices that people have to make. Sometimes, it's real easy to judge us, I guess, from the standpoint of what we didn't get done. But I think everyone's up there really trying hard. Sometimes things just politically, I mean, it doesn't happen the way you want it to.
Leadership can be a lonely place sometimes.
It can be. Yeah. It can be. Yeah. But it's a great place. I mean,
it's a great place. It's a needed place, but it's not.
Yeah, and I think it's something that when you leave there, you know what you've accomplished. Do you always get everything that you want to get done? No, you never will. But when you leave there and you feel like you've accomplished a lot and you made Texas a little bit better place for people, it's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that's an impact that transcends. You're going to run a business for years. You're going to do a lot of things, but the things that you're doing right here are going to stand. And I don't want to say the term stand the test of time, but pouring back into the education system. Well, there's thousands, millions of kids that are going to be impacted by those decisions. Right. So Ed Thompson will have a stamp on some of those things that you'll get to carry from an internal perspective.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I think that pretty much covers it. Unless you have anything else that you wanted to make sure we touched up on.
I really appreciate what y'all do, though. I think advocating for industry is so important. I think it's a very misunderstood by a lot of people, and so a lot of the opportunities that we get to be able to hear good information from the source is helpful, and I think it's good for legislators to hear that. A lot of them don't live in this region. They've never been to this region. They don't know that much about it. Just what they read and hear.
Right.
And so when y'all come up and are able to speak to them and talk to them about what goes on here, and you've got some great folks up there with Kim Council and people like Hector Rivera and those guys, Sam Gamage, they do a great job of advocating for industry here in our region, and they're very well respected. So it's good to see that. I really appreciate the opportunity when y'all come up to be a part of that conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I think the key is all these organizations, while they're serving the industry, they're also serving the community and the people. They're a liaison between those things. And so it's not industry driven and forget about the community. It's industry driven. Now, how do we drive jobs in the community,
Sure.
opportunity,
Sure.
and then work with our legislators? I mean, when you think about something as massive as just in this Harris County region, Brazoria, all those things touching it, we're talking about millions of people. Now bringing all the politicians together and having them try to work together is just a daunting task.
Yeah.
You guys do an amazing job of that. I always said that I always got good nuggets from you. So at the very beginning of our show, I got a good nugget. Before making a big decision, I wrote that down. Ask God and ask my wife.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm good. And then I'm going to go home and tell her I'm running for office today. I'm going to test that one out. I'll call you, let you know how that goes.
Call me and let me know how that goes.
I'll say, hey, we're knocking doors this Saturday.
I'll be praying for you.
Yeah. So if she meets me, if she's out in the front ready to fly her at 7 a.m., I know I got to keep her.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Well, and if she's not, then I'll have her call you. So with that being said, we appreciate you. I want to remind our audience, I want to remind those that are listening, sometimes we get enamored with specific politicians, those that are on TV and with the biggest Twitter following and stuff. And so we kind of see an allusion to what that is about. And we forget that at its core are men like yourself, people who've been on this show, Congressman Babin that's been on this show, people who grew up in these regions, who built their businesses in these regions, whose kids went to school in these regions, whose family, whose churches are in these regions, and they serve, give, and commit their lives to this. And there's a lot of sacrifice for your whole family. So next time you see your local legislative person, I would encourage you, to the audience, just give them a high five. Give them a break. Don't come up yelling at them. Don't stop them when they're having their coffee. High five them first and then yell at them. Remember that they've been working and they're trying hard and they care.
Sure.
They actually care about your community. And so, as always, to our audience, we encourage you to follow us. You can connect to us through LinkedIn. Ed, thanks for letting me call you Ed.
Sure.
How do people reach you? That's one thing we forgot. So when I do want to contact my local representative, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Well, we certainly through email. You can reach us through our email, and we have a website that's edthompson29.com.
Gotcha.
Is one way. At Rep Ed Thompson on Twitter. We've got social media, Facebook, those sorts of things. Instagram. We're everywhere when it comes to that. Just call us.
Gotcha.
My cell number is 281-734-9856. I'm always available.
There you go.
Call me on my cell phone. If you've got something that you need to know or want to know or need some help with, we'll be glad to help.
That's leadership right there. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
So tune in to us. You can go to the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region. You can subscribe to any of our channels. Stay closely connected to the work that we're doing. Remember, this is a chance and a call to action to get out of the seats, get out of the bleachers, get involved in your community, and stay closely connected to your local representatives. Speak to them. Let them know what's going on in your world so they can speak for you out there in Austin. And just a reminder, too, that we're nearing the Gulf Coast Industry Forum, which is coming up in September. This is a huge opportunity.
Great.
It's like the in the oil and gas world, they have what's called now I forgot the name of it, OTC.
Yeah.
And in that, it's like this is the OTC for petrochem, really, when you think about it. It's taken over the Pasadena Convention Center. Thousands of people there over a couple of days. We had to miss it last year in real life. Now we get to bring everybody back in, which is just really exciting. People like yourself are there a lot of times, and you can get connected. So if you haven't purchased your tickets yet or purchased your booth, reach out to the Economic Alliance. They can help you with that. And a reminder that we're going to be taking about a 30-day hiatus from the show, just to take a recharge and a re-break or a break. And we're going to come back with some great guests for our next season. So we look forward to seeing you guys soon, and stay connected. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
You guys have a good one.
Thank you.